Assalamu alaikum students. Today we are going to talk about some more important points related with pragmatics and discourse analysis. I will cover these topics in this lecture: cornerstones of pragmatics, context, the level of language and linguistics, difference between grammar and pragmatics, and difference between semantics and pragmatics. And inshallah by the end of the lecture you will be able to analyze the difference between pragmatics and semantics and grammar. So let's just start with the cornerstones of pragmatics. Basically, there are four fundamental cornerstones or four important elements that we have to keep in our mind when we are studying pragmatics. Number one, communication involves complex intentions. While studying pragmatics, we have to keep this thing in our mind that there are multiple intentions or multiple meaning behind whatever a person is saying. Secondly, these communicative intentions have to be inferred. Means for a good communication, we have to understand what the speaker is trying to say. Until and unless the inferred meaning is not clear or the intentions are not clear or understood, we cannot have a good communication. Thirdly, communication is governed by principles and maxims. Just like grammar is governed by rules, we have to follow the rules of the grammar while we are focusing on structure of the sentence or when we are focusing on the grammar or tenses. So it's the case over here that in pragmatics we have to follow principles and maxims. We are going to discuss this principles and maxims in detail in the further lectures, but right now you just have to keep this thing in your mind that communication involves principles and maxims. And fourth one is that there is a fundamental distinction between explicit and implicit conveyance of information. Means there is a clear distinction of how things can be clearly said, explicitly expressed, or there can be some implied meaning or implicit meaning as well. So in which cases we have to be more clear, and in which cases we have to cover our sentence or we have to use inference in our sentences. This is we have to study in pragmatics. In the previous lecture we have talked about the definition given by Euler, that pragmatics is the contextual meaning, right? So basically pragmatics is the study of contribution of context to meaning. Context of an utterance consists of a speaker, the sentence which is uttered, the act performed in the uttering of sentence, and the hearer. So these are the four things that are involved when we talk about the context. In pragmatics, there are four types of context: physical context, epistemic context, linguistic context, and social context. Now, first of all, let's talk about the physical context. The physical context is basically the location of a given word, the situation in which it is said, as well as the timings, all of which aid proper understanding of the words. So basically, physical context include the location where anything is said and the timings in which it is said. Second is epistemic context. The epistemic context refers to what a speaker knows about the world. For example, what background knowledge is shared by the speaker is part of your epistemic knowledge. It means that the knowledge the speaker has and can be communicated to the listener. Like for example, uh, for visiting faculty, word visiting faculty, there is another word known as cooperative faculty. So if the speaker is known of this knowledge, or if that particular speaker knows about this particular term, then he or she can easily communicate it with the listener. Third is linguistic context. The linguistic context refers to what has been said already in that utterance. For example, if I begin a discussion by referring to Jane Smith and in the next sentence refers to her as being a top-notch athlete, the linguistic context let me know that the antecedent for her is Jane Smith. So it means the linguistic context, you can say it's just like coherence and cohesion. The speaker and the listener should be aware of how sentences are linked to each other and what coherence is created through logical conversation or through different words, how cohesion is created. Fourth is social context. The social context refers to the social relationship among speaker and listener, how they are related with each other. Are they close friends or just a classmate or siblings or a stranger? Okay, so this is the social context. Now let's talk about the level of language and linguistics. When we look at any text, then there are different ways of analyzing that particular text. It can be discourse analysis or text linguistics when we are trying to figure out how communication, written communication is taking place in the text. Then it can be divided into further different fields or further different types. When we focus on the meaning, then that field is known as semantics. When we focus on the situation and the context, then that is known as pragmatics. When we focus on the sentence, clauses, phrases, words, then basically this is the field of grammar or morphology and syntax. When we focus on the sounds and letters, then that is known as phonology and phonetics or graphology. But basically our focus is on discourse analysis over here. Now before that, let's see what is the difference between semantics and pragmatics. Semantics basically attempt to relate meaning to logic and truth and deals with meaning as a matter primarily of sense relation within the language. So basically semantics only focuses on the meaning of the words and sentences or its logical truth that is present in the sentence. Whereas pragmatic attempts to relate meaning to context of utterance, it views language as action which is performed by the speaker. So basically in pragmatics, we have to focus on the context of in which the speaker has said that particular utterance. Secondly, pragmatic is the study of meaning of words, phrases, and full sentences. But unlike semantics, which deals with the objective meaning of words that can be found in dictionary, pragmatic is more concerned with the meaning that words in fact convey when they are used, or with intended speaker meaning as it is sometimes referred to. So basically we can say that pragmatics is also the study of meaning of words, phrases and sentences, but over here the focus is on what the speaker mean by using those words and phrases and sentences, whereas in semantics we only focus on the literal meaning of the words and sentences. Thirdly, semantic is concerned with the words and sentence meaning, pragmatics entail utterance meaning. An utterance can be defined as a word or a sentence that is uttered by a speaker. So same again over here it is mentioned that semantics focus on the sentence or the word meaning or the literal meaning, whereas pragmatic focuses on the speaker's meaning or the sentence that is uttered by the speaker. And that's how pragmatic attempt to analyze how it happens that more is communicated than said. Now let's talk about the difference between grammatical analysis and pragmatic analysis or discourse analysis. The first difference is that grammatical studies look for rules while pragmatic studies look for principles. Rules are black and white, that is, you are either right or wrong. It means if you are following the rule, you are white. If you are not following the rule, then it is black. Like for example, if you have to say that he studies linguistics. Now in the last S of studies is required by a rule. When you are using he or she, then you have to use S with the verb. This is a rule which we have to follow. If you are not following the rule, then it is wrong. Whereas in principles are not black and white. If you are obeying them to some extent or you can violate them to some extent. For example, a principle says that we should tell the truth and another says that we should be polite in our speech. If you are not following these two, then it doesn't matter much. But in case of grammatical rules, if you are not following the rule, you are considered out of that linguistic field, whereas nothing as such is there in the principles. Secondly, in grammar studies, we end up with product, while in grammar pragmatics, we always deal with processes. In other words, after we have analyzed a sentence grammatically, our job is done. In a pragmatic inquiry, we deals with an ever unfolding process as the discourse goes on and on. The extra meaning of some words become clearer and clearer as the discourse or as the communication goes on. In short, it means that grammar produces any product, that is, it shows how words or the signs are related with each other. Whereas in pragmatics, we have to focus on the process, we have to focus on the communication, how communication is going on, and how the words are giving meaning. So these are some of the references for these slides. Thank you so much.